Yesterday, we told you about the 3 American terrorists that were likely recruited from Minnesota. They're among the suspected militants behind the Kenyan Mall massacre. I, for one, don't believe that our federal government can't figure this one out yet. Joining me now is James Carafano. He is Vice President of Foreign and Defense Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Long time no see, my friend. How are you?
Hey, it's good to be with you again.
Yeah. Tell me.
Sad days, though.
I will tell you that and maybe it's just me, so correct me. I can't believe that we have no idea if these guys are from Minnesota or from the United States yet. Do you believe that at all?
Oh, absolutely. Look, this is not a new problem. So the Somali diaspora has actually been pretty interesting. Unlike a lot of groups that come to the United States, the Somalis have really congregated in a few areas around the country, and they've become very cohesive small communities, in many ways kind of like what we've seen in Europe. And they make ideal recruiting pools because they're closed, isolated communities, are not assimilating very well. And they've been recruiting people to go over and fight for al-Shabaab for years. And we've seen them pop up in all kinds of crazy places, including suicide attacks in Iraq and other things. So this is not new news. And the FBI's actually been actively looking at this for years. So the fact that we know they're doing this and the FBI's been on the case, and you're seeing guys like this pop up, boy, that raises some red flags.
Yeah, I mean, and what I'm saying to you, though, is they're pretending like this is a new thing. I talked to Michelle Bachmann. I've talked to people in and around Minnesota in particular, and I also have talked to enough terror experts to know this has been going on for a very long time. And with all of the sophisticated information, all of the ticketing and all of the NSA and everything, we don't know. We have the names of people from America, but we don't know if that's what's happening. Are we even down on the ground checking these mosques yet? Do you know that, James?
Well, the FBI's out there in the communities. That's why this is really disturbing. Now, in fairness to them, I mean, these guys are not stupid. So what we're seeing is you don't say, hey, I'm going to get a direct flight from Minneapolis to Mogadishu. You say, I'm going to go visit my relatives in Nigeria or some other country, which doesn't necessarily raise as many red flags, and then you're picked up in their funnel. But here's the deal, and this is really, really important. This is one of the signature weapons of Al-Qaeda, the pipeline of getting foreign fighters from one place to another. This is a huge problem in Syria. I was talking to the French, who are apoplectic. There's like 200 Europeans that are actively fighting for Al-Qaeda in Syria. They came through Europe. They go to Turkey or they go to Spain, and then they get funneled in there. This is a classic Al-Qaeda technique. That's how they got people into Libya. So if our federal government does not have a program that is directly going after one of the key enablers of Al-Qaeda's global activity, and they're not doing that effectively, let's just throw up our hands and go home.
So, James, I have been told that the U.S. State Department resettled and selected communities, and for some reason selected Minnesota out of all the places where you could go. I mean, you're coming from Somalia. The last place I think I want to go is, Minneapolis, especially in the wintertime. But the State Department was the one that selected these regions and just put, 10,000 at a time. People just move them in. Why? Who are these people? How'd they get screened? What is this?
So what's unusual about this community is, unlike most diasporas that have come to the United States, think, for example, like the Vietnamese after the Vietnam War, what happens is you bring them over, you resettle them in the community, and then what happens in a couple of years is they start to spread out. And this is what's really kind of prevented us from having the European problem. I mean, the Islamic population in the United States is geographically diverse, and it's culturally diverse, and it's community diverse. So you can go to Dearborn, Michigan, and okay, there's a gazillion Muslims there, but they're from all over the place and different cultures and different communities and everything else. Europe's had this problem is everybody from one country goes to one neighborhood in London, and they sit there, and it becomes little whatever stand, right?
Yeah, right.
And it becomes, they don't assimilate. They don't seize the, they don't seize the dream. They don't spread out. They remain isolated, and in many ways, it's a breeding ground to go back and become a terrorist. And so, what's been really disappointing about the Somali community is it's just plopped there, and it just hasn't moved at all. And it's become a prime recruiting ground. But like you said, this is like totally not news. This is the oldest thing in the book, and these pipelines, they are. Every time you see a new thing flare up, whether it's Libya or Syria, or we saw this in Iraq, or even, the mother of all things where it started back in Afghanistan against the Soviets, there's a catalyst there that drives these things, and it's these pipelines that bring in people, that bring in money, and you got to deal with these things. The Counterterrorism Center at West Point, they had this study of all these documents we found in Iraq. And they were bringing these, wacko guys in from all over the Middle East and Europe. And they were like masseuses and farmers and photographers and engineers and nuclear scientists. And they're bringing them in to fuel, throw gasoline on the fire. You got to deal with these things. This is where, ignoring this, like ignoring the money trail like we did before 9/11, when they're funneling these huge things of cash into these madrasas and these things and nobody's paying attention.
So are you concerned? Are you concerned at all that they wouldn't have to go very far? I mean, if this is a big pipeline for recruits, what's stopping somebody from just manufacturing them here and going to the Navy Yard or going to our own Westgate Mall and doing this?
Well, that's a really good question. And first of all, recruiting somebody and getting them overseas is a different whole set of activities than organizing a terrorist attack in the United States. So it's actually a lot simpler just to suck people up and take them overseas than it is to try to organize something here on a large scale. Now, having said that, though, forget about al-Shabaab and the Somalis. You've got Hamas has a network throughout the entire Western Hemisphere. Hezbollah has a network throughout the entire Western Hemisphere. The Iranian intelligence and the Quds Force, they're all over the continent. So these guys have been here a lot longer than al-Shabaab, and they have a lot deeper roots. And we always say, you know what? Well, they could do terrorist attacks, but they haven't operationalized yet. Therefore, they're not a problem. Now, we have a good example. You saw the Iranians. Remember a while back, the Iranians tried to organize a terrorist attack in Washington, D.C., and it was kind of like the Keystone Cops, But here's the deal is, they learned a lesson from that. You can't do this and be stupid. So I'm not in the camp that says we should be very sanguine about, well, if we have terrorist groups up in the United States, but they're just fundraising, and they're just recruiting people, and they're just gathering intelligence, we shouldn't worry about that these guys aren't going to be the source of the next 9/11. Because all it takes is one smart terrorist and a little practice and some lackadaisical attitude by domestic security here, and all of a sudden the next 9/11 comes not from some cell in Hamburg or rooted in some planning cell in Afghanistan, but it happens in the basement next door.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, James.